Hello, I'm Attorney Todd Leneve. Welcome to West Virginia Gun Law. Today I wanted to take a few minutes to talk with you about the concept of deadly force when we're talking about a self-defense situation. Stick around. So when we talk about deadly force, what exactly does that mean? Well, we have some guidance under West Virginia case law that has pretty consistently held that by deadly force, it is meant force that is likely to cause death or serious bodily harm. While it's pretty easy to agree what death is, this concept of serious bodily harm can be a little bit more confusing. It's somewhat of a term of art that may not have a universal acceptance in day-to-day conversation as to what it exactly means. Well, fortunately, again, we have some guidance, this time from the state code, which talks about it in actually several different areas, but gives us a general set of definitions that allow us to better understand what's meant by serious bodily harm. This term is defined in various sections of the West Virginia Code to mean bodily injury which creates a substantial risk of death, which causes serious or prolonged disfigurement, prolonged impairment of health, or prolonged loss or impairment of the function of any bodily organ. So with this definition, we can understand that a little more readily the idea of serious bodily harm relates to the kind of injury that likely is going to remain with us for the rest of our lives. It may alter the course of our lives because of the nature of the harm that we suffer, whether it's to an organ, a limb, whatever the case might be. It's something that's going to change how our life unfolds going forward from the time of that injury into the future. So when we're looking at this idea of being presented with a deadly force threat, one of the things that's helpful is to understand how the law in this state looks at a deadly weapon and what would constitute a deadly threat. Deadly weapon means an instrument which is designed to be used to produce serious bodily injury or death, or is readily adaptable to such use. You'll see on the screen here a list of items that are expressly defined under this code section as being deadly weapons, weapons that are capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. And while this list is what's defined in the code, it certainly is not an exclusive list of things that could be used to bring about death or serious bodily injury. We have to go back to that definition and look at that phrase, readily adaptable to that purpose. In other words, we're saying any item that could readily be used, whether in its immediate form or through some simple adaptation, to produce death or serious bodily harm in a person, is also considered to be a deadly weapon. So when we're talking about those kind of things, readily adaptable to that purpose, what do we mean? Well, how about tools? A hammer, screwdrivers, an axe, a shovel. Things like that can all produce a level of force if used against a person that could cause death or serious bodily harm or injury. Those things clearly have a non-deadly purpose in their design, but because they can be readily adapted, those things would be deadly weapons, dangerous weapons. Now, how about other common objects? What about a rock, a brick, a baseball bat? Things that we might use on an everyday basis that, again, don't have the purpose of being used for a deadly force threat against another person, but in the right hands or in the wrong hands can absolutely be used for that purpose. They're readily adaptable to the purpose of causing death or serious bodily harm. And so it's important to begin to understand that it's not just a list of specific things that are set out in the state code that can cause problems like this, but rather it's everyday objects that are capable in the wrong hands of being used to harm somebody or to kill somebody. And so when we talk about a deadly force threat, it's not just the code, but rather it's the object itself and the manner in which it's being used that we have to evaluate as a self-defender when we're faced with that kind of a threat. So when we face a deadly force threat by an aggressor, we then have the right under our law to utilize an appropriate level of force in response to that threat. If it's a non-deadly force threat, we can only use non-deadly force in response. If it's a deadly force threat, then we would be justified in using deadly force in response to protect ourselves or another person. And so I think one of the key things that it's important we take away from this today is that if you use force of any level in response to a threat of any sort, you have to have legal justification on your side. And in order to ensure that we have the best chance of establishing legal justification, you need to have all the elements of self-defense law on your side. And if you haven't seen the video already, I did a video a little while back on the elements of self-defense as defined under West Virginia law. And it's worth going back and taking a look at that if you haven't seen it. If you did see it, it's probably worth going back and taking another look just to refresh yourself so that you understand this concept we're talking about here and how it would apply. Because without all the elements of self-defense present, you don't have the ability to argue for legal justification of your actions. I'll go ahead and link that video in the description below so that you can go take a look at it and get a refresher or see it for the first time. So hopefully you understand a little bit better today what we mean when we talk about deadly force under West Virginia's law and how it may apply in a situation that you may find yourself in. And most importantly, I think it's critical that you take away from this that it's not just a set of defined items that represent a deadly force threat, but rather not only those items, but things that are readily adaptable to that purpose. If you have questions on this topic, please drop them in the comments section below or reach out to me directly. You can find my information in the websites that are linked in the description, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. My whole goal here is to ensure that before you ever find yourself in a position where you have to make a self-defense decision, you have a good, solid understanding of what the law is and know what you can or can't or should or shouldn't do in that situation. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please consider doing so. We'd love to have you as a part of this growing community as we work to spread this important information and make sure that as many people as possible get a chance to hear how the law may apply to them in their daily lives. I'd also appreciate it if you'd hit that like button and share this video with your friends. I appreciate you spending time with us today. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and until then, take care and be safe.